All right. Hello, everyone. We thank you guys for joining us, and we hope you've been enjoying the incredible sessions we've seen so far today. My name is Mackenzie Lauka, and I'm the e-learning instructional designer at the American Marketing Association. I'm pleased to welcome you to this morning's session, Winning Strategies for Personalization Success in 2023, brought to you by MoEngage. Before our session today, I'd like to go over a few of the features you can interact with during the session. On the right side of your screen, you can see a chat box and a Q&A box. Be sure to use the chat feature to interact and network, and use the Q&A question box to ask all of your questions, which will be answered during the portion at the end of the session. With that, I'm pleased to welcome today's speakers, Megan White and Iram Ishik. Megan currently works as the VP of Marketing North America at MoEngage, and Iram serves as the Head of Marketing at Storyly. Please join me in welcoming Megan and Iram.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Going to take over the sharing. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I think we can.
Perfect. Well, we're really excited to be here with all of you today. This is one of our favorite topics, is personalization. I know it's something that marketers have cared about for several years. So whether you're a beginner at personalization or you're already implementing advanced strategies, you're going to hopefully walk away with something that you can apply. So just a quick agenda. We're going to go through how to create a great foundation for personalization success. We're going to also share some best practices for personalization, as well as examples from brands on how they're creating customer-centric campaigns. And then we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A at the end. So before we get started, just wanted to give a quick intro to us. I am here with our partner, Iram, which I'm really excited about today. So MoEngage, we're an insights-led customer engagement platform. So we help marketers like yourselves be able to not only get really rich data and insights on your audiences and their behavior and what they care about, but we also give you the tools to be able to act on those insights. So being able to leverage us from multi-channel marketing, like email marketing, SMS, mobile app. We serve almost all of the different kinds of channels, and we partner with brands like Storyly to be able to support broader strategies as well. So we've been around since 2014. We've been recognized in multiple publications like the Gartner Magic Quadrant, the Forrester Wave, and then various other awards as well. And we work with a mix of customers, both mid-market and enterprise. So being able to support customers as they grow. And so with that, I'm just going to pass it over to Iram to give an introduction to Storyly.
Thank you so much, Megan. And hello, everyone. It's certainly a pleasure to be here today as part of AMA virtual conferences. Just a brief introduction about Storyly. We're a bit younger, I guess I shall say. So Storyly was actually the brainchild of App Samurai Inc. And it was established in 2020 at Quarter in New York. And basically, it's the user engagement platform that brings the mobile native full screen image and video stories into mobile apps and mobile websites. And Storyly is all about fostering creativity with flexibility and practicality. So with Storyly stories, marketers can elevate overall experience they provide to their users in their digital platforms to drive better engagement, stickiness, retention, loyalty, and of course, conversion of the core action. This full screen, interactive and personalized channel would allow users to discover their next favorite item, product, service, go to checkout immediately without any friction, and have a two-way communication with its interactivity and immersiveness. And as a one step further, it has provided seamless integrations with customer engagement platforms like MoEngage in order to help these journeys to be more smart and drive the right message to right users at the right time. So as of now, we're about 100 people and counting. And in terms of clients, we have more than 350 clients on a global scale in more than 40 countries with a lot of well-known brands. And we have an amazing customer community who is helping us grow. We have recently been awarded the Momentum Leadership at Mobile Marketing Software category in G2. And we were rewarded as the App Engagement Platform of the Year by Effective Mobile Marketing Awards in the United Kingdom. So I guess in a nutshell, that covers about it. And we will come back to tips and advices from our angle, of course. But now back to you, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we get started, we just wanted to do a quick poll just to understand where people feel that their personalization strategies are, just so we can customize the talk a little bit. We think of this as a speed session for today, so just want to make sure it's as relevant as possible. And you should start to see the poll on your screen soon. Okay, so while that's running, we'll hop right in. I'm seeing so far a mix of folks between the at the beginning and the needs work stages. Often something you always hear. I think your personalization strategy is never over. It's always going to need some refinement. So just to level set, most of us, I think, have bought into personalization. Like I mentioned earlier, it's something that's been talked about for years and years. It's definitely one of those marketing buzzwords, but it's also a very strategic approach that marketers can take to better connect with their audiences. And so these are just some of the stats. 80% of brands actually, or customers prefer brands that personalize offers. There's always a good impact when it comes to personalizing an experience and what that experience would then offer in terms of outcomes. So a couple other stats, 140% increase in spending per customer after having a very positive experience with a brand. That's from Deloitte. Forbes mentioned that they've had a 30%, on average, brands have a 30% reduction in customer service costs if they have a high quality experience. And so there's a lot of benefits to being able to offer customers something that is more relevant to them in the moment, especially if it's a proactive experience before they even get started thinking about what their next step in the journey looks like. So when it comes to successful personalization, this is really where you can meet customers where they are in that moment. So being able to create a consistent experience across touch points. And I just want to walk you through a very simple example about what unsuccessful personalization looks like compared to successful personalization, just to level set. And technology today is very sophisticated. And so the idea of being able to offer a personalized experience for an individual is actually possible today, and it's very easy to do that at scale. So here's an unsuccessful personalization story. A customer searches for a hotel for a trip to California on their laptop, but puts the search on hold. A few days later, they get an email about trips for New England. Obviously, the successful situation would be after they search for trips to California, now they're receiving a push notification on their phone because their phone is their preferred channel of choice. And they're also getting offers for California tourist destinations that are 30% off stays if they book within 24 hours to create that urgency. So we know this person in this example is looking for trips in California, wasn't ready to make a decision, but now we're giving them more information and an offer to be able to close that journey. And so this is extremely very simple. I think most companies can try to apply a successful situation to personalization for their own brands. But this is, I think, the reality today is that people are going to be looking for business from brands where they understand them, where they're offering the right information to them, and they are making it very easy for them to make that buying decision. So this was a survey that we did. It's the Personalization Pulse Check report, and it was surveyed between North America and European consumers. And we wanted to understand what they found frustrating about brand experience today. And I wanted to share this with you because I think as consumers, even though personalization is very much a marketing topic, consumers understand now what brands are doing. They understand that they're collecting information for them. They know that when they make a purchase for something, they're expecting to get an email confirmation. When they are looking at content, they're expecting to say, hi, first name when they open up that email. They're expecting for these little moments of delight. And so when you think about frustration with a brand, really it comes down to not having that personalized experience. And so when we did this survey, we had a couple responses from consumers that were pretty interesting. 26% are most frustrated when a brand says different things on different channels. So if they are looking on mobile, then they get an offer on social and it's completely different from what they're looking at. That can be frustrating. Another said when brands send you irrelevant content or product recommendations, 15% said when brands don't understand your preferences based on your previous encounters or purchases. I've definitely had emails from brands about products that I've already purchased and I don't necessarily need to buy again. And that can be very frustrating for me, especially when all of us get so many emails every day. Especially when you think about frequency too, 24% of consumers are frustrated when brands send too many or too few messages. I think every consumer has their brands of choice. Every consumer has those brands they're most loyal to. And for those brands to truly understand which consumers are loyal to them and how they want to be able to personalize that engagement with those specific consumers or not, that's an important aspect of marketing. And so all of these different things just show us that consumers are expecting a lot from brands today. And obviously, with all the competition in the market, it's important for brands to be able to deliver a strategy that's relevant to each individual. So how do we do that? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Personalization, the foundation really comes down to having the right data. And so when you think about it from a marketer's point of view, I think everyone on this presentation probably can agree they have an email system. Everyone has an email marketing system that they're messaging people to. I think email is one of those channels that have been around forever. It's tried and true. We're going to continue to use it. Other channels out there, though, were also very important to be mindful of, especially when you think about that in-store and online experience. If you're a retailer, you probably may have an e-commerce site, but you also have an in-person location. If you're working at a bank, you may have your online experience, but you may have a branch that people are visiting. So you need to be mindful that that in-person interaction needs to mirror that online experience, and they need to feel connected. Then you have channels like mobile apps, which again have been around for a while, but are now starting to become channels of choice. Interactive stories, which Erin will chat about as well, are different ways for you to engage with those individuals. And that's another channel that you have to also be aware of that's emerging and that consumers are excited to engage with. Obviously, surveys, depending on what channel you're hosting those surveys from, that's another channel. You probably have data from your CRM tool or from other analytics tools like Google Analytics on your website that you're looking at. So needless to say, lots of data, lots of tools can feel very overwhelming, but the key is you need to reach that state of a single view of the customer. You want to be able to take all of that data that you have, knowing that consumers are jumping from channel to channel, and try to aggregate this data together so that you have one view of every individual in their journey, so that you can understand what content are they engaging with and what channel of choice they care most about. So sometimes this is pretty daunting. There are a lot of technologies out there today that can help simplify this for you. So MoEngage can help bring all of this data in to a single unified profile. There's customer data platforms out there that can do the same thing. Even some of your basic marketing automation tools that you're using can start to aggregate data across different channels. So this is something that does seem very overwhelming, but it is a good foundation for personalization to first get your data in place and have that unified view. So know your customers are everywhere. We talked about a little bit of the channels right before that. This is just a visual. And when you think about channel engagement, it's obviously, something you need to be mindful of when you're thinking about presentation of content. How will that content look on different devices? But also when you're thinking about creating marketing programs, you may have an email marketing campaign, and then you may have a campaign that's for SMS. And obviously, you need to have content for both. And so how can you maximize your ability to create a campaign that would be multi-channel appropriate? So that way you're able to, from an individual or a team or whoever large your marketing department is, be able to be most efficient with your time. And so looking at like multi-channel platforms that can help. You also want to think about, when it comes to personalization, you may not be able to personalize on all channels at first. You may have to actually take a step back and say, okay, look, I know that based on the data in my system, I get the most engagement from email and web. And maybe you just start there, and that's absolutely okay. And then you can grow as your strategy grows. Because especially if you're a smaller team or you're just getting started with your personalization journey, you can't expect to do everything well. So try to focus in on what data you have to start with. This is just kind of a boiled down version of what a customer profile could look like. So this example is a consumer who has done a couple interactions with a brand. They've clicked on a push notification from their phone. Then from that, they've opted into SMS. They were able to get updates via SMS. They also, thinking about the multi-channel aspect, there's the opening of emails, there's the opening of additional push messages. And so in the case of Sarah, she opened up an app, she checked her bank balance, she searched for home loan, she visited 3 home loan pages. So from a marketing point of view, now I can understand the different channels that she's looking at, but also the different types of interaction. So if I'm a bank and I'm trying to market to Sarah, I would know that maybe she's in the search for a home loan or a mortgage. And so being able to then promptly share information around mortgages, maybe through email, since she seems to engage with email and more frequently, I can then start to make a case for what that journey could look like for Sarah. And you can start to associate and segment people based on those specific criteria. So maybe we know that Sarah has finally reached a threshold where she has enough in savings to qualify for a certain mortgage. Now, all of a sudden, she's automatically put into an affinity group called eligible home buyer. And then I can start to have a content stream that's designated for her based on that journey. So when you're thinking about segmentation, that was just an example, but you want to make sure from a personalization standpoint, not only do you have the right data foundation and that your data is connected and that you have that holistic profile, but now you need to think about how can I segment my audience and how can I do that in a really smart way based on individuals' journeys that I often see. And those journeys should align with the buying journey as well. So obviously we were looking at a bank example that might be very different if you're a retailer. It could be a very different experience. And so when you're thinking about your segmentation approach, think about these 4 questions. I tried to really boil it down to trying to make it something that is actionable. So first, are your segments identifiable? So once you start segmenting your data, do you have very clearly defined criteria for demographics or behavioral attributes in each of those segments? And are they different from one another? Because if you have some overlapping criteria, you may not need as many segments. So in the case of Sarah being an eligible home buyer, she clearly, is looking at home loan content. She's looking at different information on the website. And now from a demographic standpoint, she has enough funds to qualify for a mortgage. So she would be a criteria that we could put in an eligible home buyer segment. So once you start to think through, okay, what's that criteria? Then you want to think about the size of the segment. If your segment's too small, it may not be worth investing a lot of time and resources right away. Now, if you're a larger team, that's a different situation. But if you're just getting started with personalization, you're a smaller team, look to see that you have a pretty substantial segment of people who would have similar attributes or qualifying criteria so that you can actually create very personalized programs for them. Going back to the differentiated part, this is really important because if you do have segments that are overlapping, when you're starting to think about how do I actually automate some of these processes, you want to try to avoid redundancies. What you wouldn't want to have happen is for any individual to be part of too many segments, because then they may just be getting that, going back to how many messages as a brand, too many different messages, too few messages, too many irrelevant messages. You want to make sure that it's as differentiated and relevant as possible to each of those different groups. And then are they actionable? So it's very important that after you create all of your different segments, that you want to make sure that you're communicating with them on the channels that you're expecting. So if you are doing a multi-channel approach, and whether, again, you start with 2 channels, 3 channels, even if you just want to start with 1 and try a really clear personalization channel for 1 channel, you want to make sure that you're actually achieving the goals that you set out to do. Are they getting the right information at the right time? And are they actually going through the journey that you expected them to go for? So when it comes to just multi-channel personalization, there are so many tools out there to help you. There's even some marketing automation tools can help. We can help. We have a personalization tool for website for multi-channel where you can essentially create your segments and then you can pinpoint what type of engagement they're doing at each moment, and then also automate that journey based on what that next action is. Knowing that real-time interaction is so important, you can imagine a scenario like this. Let's say that you have 2 different shoppers, and for maybe you're wanting to do personalization purely based on demographics. Now, as a shoe store, I'm showing John men's shoes and I'm showing Emily women's shoes. And those could be completely shown based on maybe what they've purchased before, based on what they've looked at on the website before. So now you're able to pull in specific content that they've already searched for, even content that they may have products that they may have purchased before. You could share similar or relevant products to them. So the same exact experience, but completely personalized based on what they've done historically. And that's what a lot of marketers are now starting to have as second nature. It's almost like you have to do that to be able to sell nowadays, but also to build that relationship and start to build that loyalty. So I'll walk through just a couple examples. I'm going to pass it over to Iram to walk through some of her best practices and examples. So this first one I wanted to walk through is really, it's a unique service, and you probably have this company on your phone if you're an Android user. So OneWeather is a top US weather app. And for them, their experience is simple. People who are using their app, they're using the app because they want to know what the weather is going to be. Very simple outcome. And so personalization to them, this was, one specific strategy. It's just wanting to focus on messaging that's related to geolocation. So geolocation for a weather app, it's critical. You don't want to share sunny weather to someone in London who usually has some rainy weather. So being able to personalize your content based on where people are and being able to segment that on a probably a wider scale segmentation, because you have states that are likely going to have the same weather in the US. That was their entire goal. And so just having some personalized push messages based on where they are in the weather, they've seen a significant increase in engagement and then a higher session duration as well. And they were able to personalize the message, but also their service of delivering what the weather is every day. This other example is from AudioMac. And so they're a music streaming service, and their entire personalization strategy was around the onboarding experience. And so when you think about personalization, of course, you can think about it from what audiences do I want to segment, but you also should think about what content you have available. And I think OneWeather is a clear example of that. All they have is the weather. AudioMac is an interesting one because as an individual, you're going to have different listening preferences when it comes to music. You may like hip hop, you may like R&B, you may like pop music. And to be able to create a personalized list for users when they join is probably critical for adoption. So as part of their onboarding strategy, AudioMac wanted to start to leverage audience data to understand exactly what kind of recommended music to promote to them. So they really honed in on customer preferences and behaviors. So seeing what kind of music people were listening to, where they stopped listening to music, where they started listening to music, and then also trying to use specific messages and content to be able to promote new music to them based on what they previously did. So they created a customer journey, and there are several customer journey strategies available. And so when it comes to thinking about a customer journey, it's a similar approach to thinking about what is the average user going to do once they start one activity. And so you have to really map out your customer journeys. You may have to look at some data to understand what people are doing currently, and then trying to map out a similar journey with recommended content and messages at the right time. So this is what their journey looks like. And so as soon as someone installs the AudioMac app, it's going to wait for a minute or a day to see before it sends a push notification. Because when you install an app, if you're not automatically using the app, the chances of them going back into using the app is going to be a lot lower. So they want to make sure that doesn't happen. They want to give people a very clear onboarding journey. So then having a push notification go out with a trending artist, see what happens. Are they engaging with that artist? Do they care about the artist? And then if that's not the case, then waiting another day and sharing some top songs that are on the market just to see, okay, are they engaging with those songs? So this is how they're starting to build up that data on each user that they have on the platform to try to understand what do they care about. And then being able to, on a long-term basis, make sure that they are starting to share the right type of songs and the right type of artists with their users. And so by doing these journeys, not only did they get really deep understanding on their audiences, but they also saw their song conversion rates increase. And they also saw their retention of the users that they recently onboarded also increase week over week after using the platform. And then the last one I have is Cocoa Melody. And so for any retailers on the line, this is one of my favorite stories. And if you've ever heard me present at AMA before, you probably saw this story, so I apologize. But it is such a great story. And so most retailers have a quick sale, but retailers like Cocoa Melody, this is a long scale. This is when you think about bridal, and they're a retail and e-commerce bridal brand available US, Europe, and Asia. Bridal is an important decision for anyone who's getting married. They want to make sure that they're finding the right dress. So building an emotional connection, building that brand loyalty, it's an immediate thing that you have to do for a retailer like Cocoa Melody. And where they suffered was that initially they were focusing on advertising constantly just to get new users. but then they started to see some stagnant conversion rates. They also weren't able to get good insights on any of these users because they're coming in from different sources, and they didn't really have a good way to be able to personalize specific content based on those users' interests. And so this is an example of a brand that thought about how many journeys I could have, but let's just try to focus on one journey. Because with bridal, you may want to try on the dress. So if you're buying a dress online, you want to probably see what the fabric's like. You want to feel it. You want to know what it's going to look like on you. So they had a simple try at home campaign. And anytime someone were to log in, if they had an account, or view the site, if they had their user details, they wanted to be able to prompt them with this try at home offer. And they also had some personalized messaging on the website as well. And so what that would do is immediately, once someone could try, they could try a dress, they could pick it out. They ended up getting an email to be able to prompt them with the try at home offer. And then if there was no action after 10 days, then they would send a push notification for those that have opted in with a discount. And so that push notification could have been on mobile, it could have been on web, depending on what the user's preferences were. If there was still no purchase, now another channel update goes out with almost like an act fast type urgency offer, and then another channel notification. And it can seem a little overwhelming when you think about the journey, but really this is all based on the interactions that the individual is having. So if they open the email, they would get an offer if they didn't convert. So what this actually did was, not only did it give them some insights into content that they were looking at, because people were searching for different dresses and they were able to personalize that content based on the channel, but it also started to give them an ability to optimize campaigns across channels based on where users were most engaging. And so this is just one example of what an offer could look like. And it's very different depend who you are and where you are in your journey. So if you're at the beginning of the journey, you may see an offer around questions and being able to shop with confidence and giving them some different views of different dresses that they could look at. And then if you're, later on in the journey, you may start to receive some offers just to help you push over that threshold of purchase. And so they ended up syncing their product catalog with MoEngage. So they were able to really have a very hyper-personalized experience based on how people were viewing products. And so they saw some really great results just from leveraging dynamic personalization in products across these different channels. So now I'm going to pass it over to Iram, and she'll chat about some privacy.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. I think you have provided a great overview in terms of why it's impossible to imagine a digital world and the marketing world without personalization today, and how actually all marketers need to do that. And I guess it's the core of developing strong relationships with your brands and your customers, and it's core to loyalty and retention and driving that core action that all of us are trying to have success in. It can be a purchase for a retail app, it can be selling items on a C2C marketplace, it can be a subscription for a health and fitness community, but you need definitely personalization to achieve any of these. And here is just some, let's say, generic metrics that just support what we have already said. Like 65% of customers expect understanding from their brands, and more than 70 expect personalization, and more than 75 says, according to a McKinsey report, that if they don't get it, then they would definitely be frustrated. And I assume in a fragile economy like today, no one wants frustrated customers, right? But I guess just to mention, because I will jump into a bit about data. So I just want to talk about like the other side of the coin, which is the privacy. So, I mean, as marketers and as end users of today, we are very familiar with this concept, and also personalization has to be done with the right use of right data. But today, in a privacy concerned world, all data collection efforts are facing a lot of challenges. I mean, especially after Apple's 14.5 update of app tracking transparency framework, it became a lot more difficult to collect data. And of course, Google followed the footsteps of Apple, and we're going forward to a cookieless world day by day. So it's obvious that none of the marketers can just depend on the third-party data as sole, source of personalization. And also, I mean, after this change, Apple has started to create campaigns to create consciousness around privacy concerns. And of course, people have started to get more conscious, and people have also said, the same people who are asking for personalization also says, according to a Salesforce research, that more than 70% says if they feel like they're being tracked or if they have a privacy concern, they would definitely stop purchasing the brands and services of this brand in particular. So there's an obvious dilemma. I mean, we need to have personalization as part of our strategy. We need to have data, but there's also privacy concerns. So how are we going to address this? I guess this brings us to the next slide and the next buzzword that I'm going to introduce, which is zero-party data. This can be the answer to this question. I assume that most of you have heard of this already, maybe start using it. But just to give a textbook definition from Forrester, zero-party data is which the customer intentionally and voluntarily and proactively provides to you. I guess the key theme here is being intentional and voluntary. This is the way actually to make customers who are privacy concerned happy about the way that they get personalization. Because I mean, this is the way that they get what they want without feel tracked, because it's the whole experience is based on the data that is provided by them voluntarily and intentionally. Okay, does it mean that we should stop using first party, third party, and solely focus on zero party data? Of course not. As Megan has explained, I mean, there are lots of merits in using user properties, behavioral data, demographic data, geographical data. All of that are very, very important and can be the base of a personalization strategy. But I think, I mean, if you move on to the next slide in the iceberg model, I guess you're all familiar with, this shows us why zero-party data is also important. I mean, in a simplification model here, we see at the top of the iceberg, we have demographic and psychographic data, but at the bottom, we have behavioral as the first party data, which is basically what the customers are buying, when they're buying these, when they decide not to, etc. But when we go deeper into motivational part, it is about the why they do something. I mean, why do they stop? Why do they prefer what kind of action that they're going to take? So this is the part where zero-party data enters into the arena, I think. And of course, then comes the question, how are we going to collect this zero-party data? And again, a very, very simple answer. And in the next slide, so it's about asking them. So, I mean, simple problems does not have to have complex solutions. So it's about asking them and expecting them to answer. So today's mobile users, and especially if you consider the generations we are dealing with right now, like Gen Zs, Alphas, they just don't want to be mere audiences, they want to be active participants in the experiences that they have in different platforms and different categories, retail, health and fitness, anything that you can think of. They want to have a say in their experience, and they are willing to provide this data. So it's all about asking them, I think, to be more effective in a format that they're very, very used to. This is actually where we also step in as Storyly. I mean, this full screen immersive and interactive experience makes it a lot more easier for brands, businesses to ask this people, their audiences, their clients, their customers, why they want something in a way that's very, very familiar to them to provide that answer. It can be a poll, it can be a quiz, it can be a short and open question, it can be a trivia, whatever that is, they're very used to, I mean, just answering it without even thinking it from social media. So why not have it even in your own platform to guarantee greater responses and collect the zero-party data to make it part of your personalization journey. So, I mean, moving forward about best practices, again, about data collection, because I think it's a very, very important basis of personalization. So it's all about not making them feel like they're being tracked, but making them feel like they're part of the experience. They're the ones who's crafting the experience. And I think there was also one very, very important thing that Megan touched upon, and I want to emphasize it again. It's about consistency. I think when we talk about data, if you are asking something to the customer and when they are willing to provide you that data, you have to use it. If you are not going to use it, don't ask for it. And if you are to use it, you need to be consistent in all of the channels. So you shouldn't be saying something in your push notification, whereas something totally different should be addressing them when they open your digital platform or your app, or when they open a story in your platform, etc. So these messages that you deliver across channel should be consistent with one another and address the data that the customer provides, so that they would be satisfied and they would become loyal. They would feel a sense of belonging. They would feel like they're empowered. And I think on top of that, being smart is also important, because personalization is a buzzword and around for a very long time. And it's not just about like celebrating their birthday on the day of their birthday or welcoming them with their name. Megan also said, like, if I have just purchased a vacuum cleaner, I shouldn't come and see 3 more vacuum cleaners, right? I'm not a collector, obviously, so I don't want to have too many vacuum cleaners in my house. So that's why you need to also act smart. I mean, you need to be smart. So recommendation engines might not be the best scenario at all times. And I guess since it's also our mission statement, we love creativity and we feel like stories are a blank canvas for creativity. You can also get creative when it comes to personalization. I just want to, give the Spotify example as in the next slide. I guess, this is something we can all relate to. The wrapped experience that Spotify provides every year is something, as the end users, we all expect. It's the, I guess, ultimate level of personalization, and it goes viral. You just wait for it to happen. You know it will come, and you just expect it to be like outperforming the year before, and you just want to share it with everyone because it's all about you. It's all about your experience. You don't see data there. You see experience, your own experience. So it's just a very successful demonstration of how smart, creative personalization done by the right data that's provided by the user itself. And this is actually done by a very full screen immersive format, which is basically what we also love on Storyly as a channel. And just a great example from Storyly itself, just taking this inspiration to work. We know that a lot of other companies have done examples like Spotify, like Deezer, Pelotons, Starbucks, Letterboxd, PlayStation. They all did their wrapped versions. And in the next slide, you can see a Story client, which is actually a B2B client from Latin America, Sumer, did the same thing with Storyly Stories. So basically, just a brief intro, Sumer is a B2B platform where medium-scale businesses or small-scale businesses can set up their online stores, shipments, manage their shipments, logistics, payments, and advertising. What they did with Storyly as an inspiration coming from Spotify Wrapped is they have provided their customers with the year-end summary of their overall experience by just plugging in their user data to stories with these amazingly creative and visual templates. They just show their customers the number of their store visits, the successful orders, the best-selling products. It's just an amazing way to create a better sense of belonging, community, and eventually retention, obviously. So it was a great example of how you can, carry an inspiration coming from a giant to your own business. And moving forward, just another example, and I will just wrap up. As we said, it's all about being smart too, but in order to do smart personalization, obviously it needs to be done in the right time with the right message. And if you want to do that at scale, obviously you also need automation, not just creativity. And here comes importance of having channels that are connected to one another, that are seamlessly integrated. And for that, a great example comes from Decathlon in the next slide. So Decathlon is also using Storyly Stories, and not like the wrapped example, but in this case, it's about cart abandonment. And I guess anyone here would agree from retail businesses, cart abandonment is a pain. And it's about 70% on a global average. And imagine the revenue that you can, generate if you can decrease this number. With this aim in mind, what Decathlon did was just to create a very simple template. And again, just plug in their data source to this template, where users, when they next open the app, were encountered with a story group that said the items that you have forgotten in the app itself when you've visited in the previous time. So what they can do is to see these items that they have forgotten in their cart and immediately go to checkout when they click on the CTR button, the swipe up that we're all used to again from social media. And what they have seen was amazing results, like more than 30% of CTRs with these cart abandonment story groups, and more than 1% of the overall turnover was generated solely through these stories. I guess, I mean, to sum up as the best practices, I mean, data is a critical thing here, definitely. So being consistent is very important when it comes to personalization across channels. Being smart and being creative definitely would make you stand out from the clutter. And of course, automation needs to be in your calendar to scale up. So I guess that's about it from our side. Thank you, Megan, and on to you again.
Thanks, Sarah. Really great examples. So we're wrapping up. It's time for Q&A. It looks like we have about 5 minutes or so. While we have the questions coming in, we obviously want to help you as fellow marketers. And so if you are interested in learning how either of our solutions can support your personalization strategy, please do reach out to us. We'll set up a poll, and that way we'll know who is interested or not. Also, as a marketer, I want to connect even outside of products. So please do feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I would love to meet other marketers and always have opportunities to brainstorm and connect too. But if you do want to chat with us and learn a little bit more about how we can help you, informal conversation, just let us know, and we'll take it from there after the presentation. And for Q&A, it looks like there's quite a few questions coming in. Mackenzie, should I give that back to you and you can address those for us?
All right, absolutely. Thanks. First off, thanks so much, Megan and Aram, for that great presentation. Since we do only have a couple minutes left, we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. But if we don't, again, you can head over to the exhibitor booth under the Expo tab to visit MoEngage's booth, as well as other partner booths, and be sure to connect with them there. So we'll go ahead and get through as many questions as we can. The first one we've got here is, how can you measure the effectiveness of your personalization efforts?
This is a great one. And I think we both probably will have something to say. So I'll start first. So when it comes to personalization, you probably saw when we were chatting some results, right? And so when you think about personalization, you always have to think about, why are you doing this? Like, obviously you want to create a good experience for your customers. That's one, but that's hard to measure. So think about when you're personalizing your programs, what are you personalizing? And then based on the data that you're collecting, how can you attribute that back to some kind of ROI? So often we'll have customers of ours that will purely want conversion metrics. I just want to increase my sales. I want more conversions. And that's a common metric that everyone wants to measure. And you can set the right tracking in place to do that. So if you're launching a personalized campaign, being able to attribute every step of that campaign, as long as you have a similar tracking code or campaign, you would be able to have it register that interaction attributed to that sale. Now that requires some marketing operations support, right? Like you need to make sure that you have someone on your team who can help you set up the right tracking in place. But generally conversions as it relates to personalization programs is a top one. Some people just care about engagement metrics when they're starting a campaign. So the same way you would track, if we look at just email, let's say you just have a personalized email campaign, looking at your opens, looking at your clicks, are you getting more results from having personalized content than you were before, but having generic content? And being able to measure the difference between the approach and where you started and where you ended. And so engagement type metrics are always, very important. And then the other I would say would be when it comes to just results for, really like on a per channel basis. I'm thinking back to the AudioMac example I shared, because they wanted to focus on retention and onboarding. So after they started their personalized onboarding campaign, they started to see that every week they were retaining more and more users that just joined. So being able to monitor your metrics closely as it relates to a business and how personalization has impacted those changes. So I'll pause there and I'll see if Aram, if you wanted to add anything, because I'm sure you have some pointers on this too.
Honestly, I agree with everything that you said. Maybe the only thing that I can add is just quite similar. Like you need to, I guess you need to start with what you have in mind with this personalization strategy. For instance, like in our case, for clients like Sumer, for Wrapped, for instance, it's not just the conversion, the core action, but it's about the community, the loyalty, the relationship building purposes. So How you can measure that, maybe not with conversion, but maybe with follow-up, I don't know, surveys, polls, etc., to understand whether it has an impact on how loyal your customers are after that journey, after that experience. Of course, I mean, we always advise, if it's about like the case of the Decathlon, for instance, it's about the turnover that they generate from the stories that they personalize versus maybe the generic ones. The CTRs, for instance, in the personalized stories versus the ones that are generic, like, I don't know, the catalogs, etc., versus the ones that are from cart abandonment. So you can also make those comparisons. Because when you just focus on the end result, it feels like just the last click attribution. It might, minimize the impact. It can just, make you lose track of the actual impact that's not being measured. So I guess there should be proxy metrics or follow-up, let's say, surveys or discussions, etc., with the customers in order to better understand whether a personalization strategy worked. But as I say at the beginning, you need to have something in mind when you start that personalization strategy, whether it would be a soft KPI or a hard KPI like a conversion. Yeah.
All right, so how can you manage personalization for an email list with subscribers who may not have shared their names in addition to their email addresses?
That's a painful question because as a marketer, I often have incomplete information coming to me. So I understand this pain. So, there's a lot of things you can do with data that's provided. For going back to the privacy comment, right? You always want to be respectful of people's privacy. So if they gave you their email and they didn't give you their name, there's a reason why they did that. Or it could just be that you have bad forms on your website. Either way, if you have one piece of data, you don't have the other, think about what information you are able to collect. So you may not even need to have someone's name to be able to still offer them a great experience, being able to still offer them a great story in your content that's referencing maybe past views that this individual has done, or being able to offer them like a suggested product based on what they've looked at before. All of that can be based on the data that you're able to collect. I know with the cookieless world, there's going to be some changes that marketers will have to make, but for right now, you can still leverage a lot of the data that users are giving to you to still offer that personalized content message or experience. You may just not be able to say, hi, first name. Maybe you just say, hey, how are you instead, and just leave that part out.
All right, so for time's sake, we will do just one last question here, and that is, how can you apply personalization in B2B marketing?
Do you want to take that one, Ira?
Hey, I gave an example for that, actually. So, I mean, I think it's today's marketing world, B2B, B2C, I don't see like drastic differences as we discussed in the past. But for instance, for B2B, it can be about, onboarding personalization, personalizing the onboarding process, for instance, like let's say in Sumer's case or in any other B2B client, they can have customers coming in for different purposes, and you can know that because it's a B2B client, you would have more information regarding them, let's say, from the beginning. So you can just personalize their onboarding processes. Or, as I said, as an example, based on their experience with you, you can just celebrate their milestones on a personalized basis. If they are, let's say, I don't know, using your services for some time, or they have just upselled or up-purchased something from your like service clientele. So you can always celebrate those. So you can just use personalization as part of your customer relationship building services. Or again, if you want to increase the subscription, etc., so you can just use personalization as part of your upsell cross-sell strategy. So I guess there are vast opportunities in B2B as well as B2C for personalization strategies. So I can think of a lot of more examples, but for the sake of not taking too much time, I will just stop here and leave it to Megan.
Awesome. Thank you. So just wanted to share our email addresses. Like we said, we'd love to connect, whether it's professionally, personally. We also have a personalization guide, which provides a lot more detail on different strategies. You can download it by accessing this link. You can also get it in our booth if you visit our booth. And then feel free to drop us a note. We do want to hear from you. And thank you again for taking the time today with us and to hear our presentation. We hope you have a good rest of your event.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much again, Megan and Iram. Another reminder that this video will be available on demand later today, right in the platform under the schedule tab. And you can find the session slides at the bottom of the session page on the platform. So thank you all again, and I hope to see you tune in for Telium's session, Supercharging Your CX in the Year Ahead. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.